I think 1 hour.
Okay.
Of course, it's up to you and to the people if they put some questions, but you know. You can do it, Oliver, you can do it.
Lots of iPhones.
Buonasera, grazie per essere con noi. 2 secondi come al solito. E poi daremo la parola a Massimo che introdurrà Katja Stuke e Oliver Sieber. Stasera si parlerà, tra le altre cose, anche di editoria indipendente. Principalmente sarà questo l'argomento della serata, probabilmente. Abbiamo con noi un po' di amici collegati, lasciamo qualche istante ancora e quando poi Massimo dà l'ok possiamo partire. Io intanto ringrazio i nostri ospiti che sono a Düsseldorf in questo momento, con qualche libro alle spalle. Insomma, ci sta. Grazie di cuore per esserci. Iniziamo perché la serata penso che sia ricca di argomenti e credo che sia importante far parlare loro e non noi. Io do un piccolo annuncio: la settimana prossima, il 1° marzo alle 21, siete tutti invitati per festeggiare questa nostra nuova testata, cioè Phocus Magazine. Speriamo che saremo in tanti, abbiamo tante novità belle da dare, abbiamo tante cose da farvi prendere coscienza delle cose che abbiamo pensato per voi. Il magazine, dopo un anno di soddisfazioni, oltre 65.000 utenti hanno visitato il nostro sito e ci seguono. Niente, siamo pronti a darvi, a recettarvi, a farvi divertire, a farvi incuriosire, a darvi delle opportunità che ci inventiamo giorno dopo giorno con tutto quello che sono le difficoltà del caso. Io osserverei un minuto di silenzio, ma credo che non sia il caso. Questa guerra ci ha un po' distrutto, un po' tutti, e stasera non siamo nell'animo giusto, però dobbiamo assolutamente continuare. La vita continua, dobbiamo resistere. Grazie ancora, Katja, e grazie Oliver. Grazie Massimo per essere con noi. A te la parola.
Okay, Katja and Oliver, I will put you the first question before in Italian. Katja e Oliver, siete fotografi, artisti, curatori, designer, editori di libri d'arte. Non è sempre così facile determinare dove finisce un'identità e dove inizia l'altra. È sempre così indefinito il confine tra i vostri ruoli? È conseguenza del vostro lavoro, una scelta o dipende dalle situazioni? Qual è il segreto per essere così poliedrici? A me sembra che cerchiate sempre di semplificare sia nelle mostre che nei libri concetti che semplici non sono, e questo dal mio punto di vista è un valore. Kat and Oliver, you are photographers and artists, curators, designers, hard book publishers. It's not always so easy to determine where one identity ends and the other one begins. Is the boundary between your various roles always so indefinite? It's a consequence of your work, a choice, or does it depend on the situations? What is the secret to be so eclectic? It seems to me that you always try to simplify, both in an exhibition and books, concepts that are not simple. And from my point of view, this is a value. Did you understand everything?
Yeah, there was a how do you say?
Internet problems.
Some internet problems, but I think we understood. Yeah. But first of all,
okay. I mean, it's a question about your eclectic roles. I mean, you are doing so many things, no? And yeah. Which is the boundary between one and one, or it depends from the situation, depends from your choice, or you always want to show your, your eclectic capacities.
Yeah, I think it's first of all, thank you for having us, and thanks for inviting us, and to just jump into this immediately. I think it was something which developed. So like we are not only working together, we are also living together. So at the beginning we were working independently, and we started this, like I think for us it was no question that we discuss our work and we juxtapose our work and we compare what we are doing and we exchange ideas and we, I don't know, judge each other's works. Maybe not so much, but this is how we, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't like a big discussions or conflicts about topics or point of view. And I think that was for us in actually more than 20 years ago, in 1999, when we started to publish this in this form of a zine and to juxtapose the images and the series and to try to understand if we have maybe common interests or similar ideas, and what happens actually if you publish it in on the same page. So what happens to the work and to our ideas when we juxtapose them.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Please don't discuss during the talk.
And this is how, is how we started doing the zines. So actually that was where we came from, or where this came from, being like super interested in magazines and any kind of published image.
Maybe it's because we were also studying together, and our studies were also about typography, doing video photography, and so it was not just like that we had to think about what kind of way we want to use or to choose. It was just there, so we decided. It was not a decision because it was there just to work with paper, with typography, design, putting text and images together. And at some point, I think we started putting our both works somehow into context and give a little text with the zines, and then we started from this point, and somehow it developed. Yeah.
Okay, diciamo, rispondere alla domanda, hanno detto, loro sono anche compagni nella vita, quindi diciamo hanno cominciato fondamentalmente lavorando ognuno per conto proprio e condividendo il loro lavoro, o chiedendo l'opinione l'uno dell'altro, mostrando, hanno anche studiato insieme tra le altre cose, poi hanno approfondito sempre di più i loro interessi. Fondamentalmente erano interessati a qualunque forma di diciamo fotografia stampata e di lì a poco diciamo è nato l'interesse per diciamo curare tutto quello che loro producevano, condiviso o meno, perché non sempre lavorano insieme, e di curarlo in tutti gli aspetti, quindi diciamo in maniera del tutto spontanea, senza una programmazione a monte, mostrare il loro lavoro sia in forma di mostra, in forma di libro, o in forma di zine o che altro. Okay, are you going to show something, or?
I was just thinking, because this is, I think, all the zines we did together, and you see, maybe at the beginning we try to have like a constant layout, and we used the archive, and we looked in both of our archives and tried to find topics to compare. And later we decided to develop new concepts and new ideas for the zine, which I think started around here when we traveled to America. Where is this? I'm confused. Yeah, and traveled through movie locations, and that's this red zine here. And that was the first time we decided to work on a collaborative project. So that was for the zines and to develop a new topic just only for the zines.
Ok, dice che all'inizio in particolare diciamo, realizzavano delle zine condividendo materiale d'archivio dei rispettivi archivi, e fino a un punto in cui a un certo punto hanno, credo, abbiamo progettato di andare negli Stati Uniti. Da quel momento, diciamo, hanno cominciato a produrre dei lavori prodotti ad hoc, ossia realizzati ad hoc insieme, o a volte anche non insieme, ma insomma senza ricorrere all'archivio, e da quel momento anche la grafica dei libri, delle zine è cambiata, proprio perché in qualche modo era funzionale a questo nuovo tipo di approccio. Ok, I will put you the second questions. Lavorate spesso sulle città. Cosa vi interessa davvero delle città? Potreste spiegarci un po' meglio il progetto Cartography Dynamique? You often work on cities. What really interests you about the cities? And can you explain a little more about the Cartography Dynamique projects?
Yeah, okay, so let's share the screen one more time. That's two questions, I think. I think the cities, yeah,
I mean, cities is often a subject of your work, so you know it's something in some way related to this project. But also in the past, you work a lot about cities.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's just we just mainly liked to be in the urban surrounding, in the bigger cities, and not so much in the periphery or the countryside, which is maybe developing a little bit, but that's how it started. The interest in the cities, because that's the place where different people meet, where you can see about development, about future, about society. That's where everything is like really very visible.
Ok. Allora l'interesse per la città nasce dal fatto che comunque, in particolare nelle parti periferiche delle città, nasce proprio dal fatto che comunque sono luoghi in cui incontri persone, dove vedi sviluppare la società, la politica, la cultura, insomma, diventano delle sorte di, come dire, di cartine tornasole di come si sta sviluppando un determinato paese o società. So what about the cartography dynamic?
Yeah, maybe it's Verbindung, was heißt Verbindung? To connect from the question of the cities to the Cartographie dynamique is maybe one big interest that the cities are really always there. They are shaping our ideas, so we are just, it's just there and influences all of us without maybe that we obviously know about it or be conscious. And with the cartography, it's help me, I'm a little bit out of my English this evening, so
yeah, maybe it's,
so I mean, yeah, just put it there, the connection between doing a portrait, a real, like we think about portraits, like there's a person in the image, right? And okay. So this person is influenced by the city and always, and I think this is a just easy connection, and it's like this. And so all this this conflicts between the individuals and the society, and within, without, together. So this is kind of visible in cities, and in cities you have different areas where people live, or where are they forced to live in the past, or maybe now, because they cannot afford somehow, and they're looking for work. And so this is interesting to pay attention, to see how certain areas are shaped by history, by the people, or maybe by bad people like now.
Maybe lass uns auch erstmal versetzen vielleicht.
Yeah, so yeah.
So, but if I understand well, I mean, in the past, I mean, you were working in the cities in a really free way, and of course the cities was influencing your work, but in this specific case you were working planning a bit more, I understood.
Yeah, I think Oliver immediately jumped into the conclusion. I think the first idea of this this cartography was like to connect all the works we did in different areas. So we started with a broader work in Japan, which we call the Japanese lesson, and focused and tried to analyze and try to photograph in different areas like Oliver described in Japan. And then for us, it was like very interesting to see what we see and learn in Japan, and that there are similarities and which are the differences between Japanese society and Japanese cities and maybe European cities and European societies. And we did this in Paris, and also now we're doing it in Germany, in Düsseldorf and in the area around Düsseldorf, the Ruhr area, but we also did it in China, or we did it in a virtual way in India. And so the cartography is a very graphic, visible network just to explain how we see the connections between all these areas worldwide are. And it's a very personal network, so it's not a
art historian style, or
yeah, and it's just a small focus, so it's not the whole world, it's just our world.
Okay, and this the development of the project is changing all the time, or everything is already fixed? I mean, you are going to go to some specific place in the future, or anytime you change and you put another city or whatever?
No, we don't have a general plan. So we said, like, for example, when we see here this, what is this? Norio Imai's walk, for example, that was something we learned about when we were in Japan. There is this guy, Norio Imai. He's an artist. He was a member of the group of the Wutai group, a Japanese artist group. They worked with for the expo in Osaka in the 1970s. And he also did one of these walks. So he left, that's what you see here, that's his work. So he left his studio and walked and turned right, left. And we thought that's maybe interesting because it's a similar strategy to what we do. So maybe we just follow his footsteps. And from this, there could be maybe a connection. Maybe we could do it in Rome, I don't know. But that's a very fluid and organic way of developing new topics.
Ok, allora, questo progetto, diciamo, rispetto ai progetti precedenti in cui in qualche modo spesso si esprimevano attraverso il ritratto di determinate classi sociali o gruppi underground o che altro, ovviamente l'influenza della città era evidente, però non c'era un legame stretto o una pianificazione. In questo c'è una maggiore pianificazione, sempre comunque legata a quello che è la loro esperienza personale. Quindi partendo dal Giappone, dove loro sono andati tantissimo, ne parliamo anche dopo, dal 2005 vanno regolarmente in Giappone, lavorano regolarmente in Giappone e sul Giappone, avendo anche collegamenti con diverse realtà dell'arte e della cultura giapponese, hanno cominciato a pensare a quali potevano essere delle eventuali relazioni con realtà o città occidentali, ma anche orientali di altre parti, quindi cinesi e altre realtà ancora. E quindi diciamo creano fondamentalmente, lavorano su dei punti, su delle visioni che loro hanno, di punti che potrebbero essere di contatto tra queste diverse culture e civiltà, cercando di analizzare quelli che sono poi i contesti sociali in cui queste persone con cui entrano in contatto, queste situazioni in cui entrano in contatto mostrano diciamo nel contesto, ma anche in relazione ai contesti, altri contesti che hanno visitato o che hanno intenzione di visitare. È sempre una visione molto personale comunque, e hanno creato questa specie di di grafico che si trova proprio sul sito. Come potete vedere, esiste un sito, cartographydynamic.org, dove loro aggiungono delle voci e ci sono anche delle voci come dire, futuribili, sia situazioni in cui loro vorrebbero probabilmente andare, e non è escluso che aggiungano altre voci. Per esempio adesso verranno a Roma per fare un workshop con Dore e non è escluso che come dire, pensino di lavorare anche a delle relazioni con la città nella quale andranno a lavorare. Okay, you want to add something else, or I will put you the another question?
Maybe I'm curious about the next question. Maybe we can come together.
How many points did you get?
Many points. Okay, be ready. Vorrei che mi parlasse del progetto You and Me. Ho lavorato anch'io in Bosnia ed è un paese che mi interessa molto. Come è nato il progetto? Come lo avete sviluppato? Che tipo di sostegno avete avuto? E come e quando avete lavorato al design del libro, che tra l'altro ha vinto un premio importante ad Arla? The question for you is, would like you tell me more about You and Me project. I have also worked in Bosnia. It's the country that interests me a lot. How did the project come about? How did you develop it? And what kind of support did you have? Or how much did you work on the design of the book, who won a really prestigious prize? And this is really beautiful.
Yeah, maybe we start with Indira.
Yeah, we start with Indira's.
So Indira and her family, they were coming as refugees to Düsseldorf in the 90s, and
she's Bosnian. She's Bosnian.
She's Bosnian, and for some reason she got to know my mother, and so she started working with my mother, being friends, or so my mother was supporting her somehow, and so we were kind of living in the same city, but at that time somehow we met, but we never talked because of the language. My mother had a little diary, not diary, but dictionary, and she tried to fishing with some words to just break the something, but so somehow it was a very nice relationship between her and my mother without big words. And Katja and I, we were studying at that time, so we really were not focusing on the war, and because we were busy, and when we talked to some
the history went on, and Indira, because in the end of the 90s, the German government, they said, okay, now the war is over, your country is a safe country now you can go back. And Indira and her family didn't want to go back because her village is in this Republika Srpska, so she wasn't really happy to go back to this to Zvornik. And they got a green card, and the last time Oliver saw her was when his family brought Indira to the
airport in Frankfurt.
And they left for America. And so we kind of forgot about her, but when we were in Chicago, I was in a group show at the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Photography, and we started thinking about this, the city of Chicago, because there was a little Ukrainian village, a little Bosnian village, all this like different areas where people with different histories lived. And we started talking with the Goethe Institute and with the museum, and they said that that's a very interesting idea, because it connects all three countries, like Bosnia, Germany, and the US. And do you want to work on this? So in a way, it was a very, during a casual conversation, they
were
asked
encouraging
Yeah, they were encouraging us and supporting it with some money, and we knew we could exhibit it in Chicago when we started working on this project.
Ok, diciamo il progetto You and Me, che tra l'altro ha vinto ARL come miglior dummy, che poi è stato stampato da Spector, credo. It was published by Spector, isn't it? Spector Books.
Yes. Yeah.
Ok.
Yeah.
È nato dall'incontro della famiglia di Oliver con Indira, che era una bosniaca che era, diciamo, fuggita dalla Bosnia durante il conflitto. In realtà con questa donna non avevano grossissimi rapporti, anche perché non c'era possibilità di comunicare molto con la lingua. All'epoca Oliver e Katja stavano studiando, quindi in qualche modo non si stavano interessando in maniera, come dire, diretta al conflitto, se non da un punto di vista umano sicuramente, ma non da un punto di vista di coinvolgimento con il lavoro. E, a un certo punto in Germania, verso la fine degli anni 90, i rifugiati vennero invitati a ritornare al loro paese, e Indira non voleva tornare in Bosnia, anche perché la zona dove lei viveva era andata a finire nelle mani della Repubblica Srpska, quindi serbo-bosniaci, cosa che è avvenuta in diverse parti della Bosnia. Cioè prima della guerra magari c'erano determinati governi o presenze culturali e religiose, e dopo la guerra c'era stato uno stravolgimento totale. E quindi ottengono una green card e Indira ottiene la green card e va con la famiglia in America. Qualche anno dopo Oliver e Katja si ritrovano a Chicago per in uno dei più importanti musei d'arte contemporanea di fotografia a Chicago, e si rendono conto che c'è, come dire, ci sono diverse comunità, dei veri e propri distretti all'interno della città di etnie che in qualche modo sono state costrette a effettuare una diaspora, ossia a scappare dal loro paese per trapiantarsi in un altro paese. E quindi da lì nasce l'idea di poter lavorare su questa, diciamo, questa diaspora bosniaca. Ottengono anche del sostegno, credo, alla stessa struttura, se ho capito bene, americana, e cominciano a realizzare il progetto partendo dalle comunità trapiantate negli Stati Uniti, per poi andare di nuovo direttamente in Bosnia. Ok?
So what you see here is now like a 2-channel video presentation or installation, how we showed it in several exhibitions. And as you can see, we made in so many different places, very different kind of photography. So we went to Sarajevo, we went to Zvornik, that's where she came from, but we also went to Tuzla because we knew about Frankie, who was a kind of famous rapper in Bosnia, and he was with his family in Nuremberg in Germany. And we were focusing on like current politics, but we were also like looking for some, like you see here, like the graveyard and the Zeichen. Yes, signs of the war, what you could still see of the war in Sarajevo. Yeah. But for us, it was never like to try to explain or make a story about the war in Bosnia, because that's something from the past. We are not journalists, but it's something we wanted to show how it affected us, how our connections are, like the connections also through music from that time, because that, for example, was an experience we made in Sarajevo, that in the bars we went at the beginning, they were playing this, or we had the feeling they were focusing on the music which was popular before the war. And then, so we always try to connect Indira's world in a way with our world. And we, from the beginning, Indira didn't know that we were doing it. And we were trying to get in contact with her. At the beginning, we thought she was living in Bowling Green in Kentucky. But that was wrong, because they had some other experiences and she got sick. So they built a home for themselves in America, but they had to leave it. And now finally we found her in Florida. So in a way, this book And the whole project is about our way to kind of find Indira and how our relation to this history and to the her history maybe is. And at the end, so we made.
So you didn't have any contact with her?
Not anymore, because it was like we met her, so we could take some photographs. We met her son. We were in contact via Facebook with some friends of her.
Yeah, we stayed at their house.
And with the daughter, we stayed at her house.
She made nice food for us.
Yeah, we had very good baklava.
Yes. Börek.
And but we also like this, for example, is Frankie. He's like a very different generation. He went back to Tuzla and he tries to connect with young people through the music, also with people in Serbia and Croatia. He brought us in contact with some people in America. So it's a very diverse combination of different images. And for example, these quotes, that's something we read while we were traveling and while we were taking photographs. Then they are like fremd, for example, that's something, that's a sprayer in Düsseldorf. He suddenly appeared. So that for us, that was like very interesting to focus on this topic of being unfamiliar, to being different, to being fremd in Germany. And so at the beginning, we made like several zines, I think 22 different chapters that with different topics about that, like, for example, this being a foreigner in Germany, but also being, I don't know, being a woman, a chapter about Zvornik, a chapter about Tuzla, and we put them all together in one big book at the end. Maybe I can find this again.
Okay, I try to translate in the meantime.
Yeah.
Ok, diciamo, loro cominciano questa storia, ma fondamentalmente lavorano in maniera molto libera, ossia non ispirandosi totalmente con un rapporto diretto alla storia di Indira, anche se poi la incrociano in America, sono in contatto con lei anche attraverso i social, però fondamentalmente diciamo, man mano che vanno avanti entrano dentro delle storie, dei contatti, quindi non so, vanno in un locale e scoprono che c'è un determinato interesse per un determinato tipo di musica, vanno a cercare quel tipo di musica in Bosnia, vanno in alcune zone della Bosnia per determinate ragioni, creano delle connessioni con le nuove generazioni della diaspora negli Stati Uniti, alla fine usano anche differenti stili e vengono fuori circa, se ho capito bene, 22 capitoli, anche abbastanza slegati tra di loro, un capitolo sulle donne, un capitolo su Zvornik, che è una città della Bosnia, cioè ogni volta in qualche modo era, come dire, una cosa abbastanza così, non caotico, anarchica, ma insomma che nasceva dall'esigenza di raccontare quello che era il loro rapporto con le storie con cui venivano a contatto, quindi non c'era una storia predeterminata, ma quanto una testimonianza di quello che era la loro analisi, il loro rapporto, partendo da quella storia e man mano che si sviluppava con i rapporti che si creavano, cercando di tirare fuori degli aspetti che a loro interessavano. How did you put together all this different stuff in the book? I mean, it was difficult to work on the design and the edit and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, because we have our history in doing the small zines, and we thought maybe it's nice to organize the ideas into the zines. And so you have some headlines or titles, your quotes on the title of each zine, so that gives the viewer, the audience a first insight or idea, and then you can have these chapters, you can read them on their own, but also they can connect, or they're connecting because they are put inside, like
Each
I think
other.
it's inside each other. It's 22 zines. And so that's how the shape of the book was developed, putting all these scenes into each other. And we knew this from the beginning when we started the project, that there will be an exhibition and there will be an artist book. And so it was kind of okay for us, I think, to straight think into this exhibition. And there's also a different approach, I think, because we like the printed material, like zines, but also we like the print itself somehow. And it's always a little, not fight, but just to struggle or to see how you can work with both or more of how photography can appear in the world. And so the book is more structured because Katja, she did most of the work. She's more structured than me. And I was more responsible for the wall. So we created on the wall some layers which visualize somehow that an exhibition is totally different, like a wall work is different than a book. So, and because you have other dynamics, diagonal.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you see different if you have a wall, yeah, then it's not linear at some point. Even if you want to see an exhibition be seen in a linear way, you cannot take the audience just like this. So they do whatever they want. So they start at the end or whatever. I mean, usually it's also possible with books, but if you are a nice reader, you start from the beginning.
Okay, but the book is just a collection of the 222 zine, or you did something more?
Yeah, wait, maybe so this, for example, this is a shot of the exhibition at the Fotografia Europea in 2016, where we showed it in Italy. And here you could see the book, and you could also read each chapter and each zine, and you could look at the images and also look at the same time at the quotes. And maybe I try to find it. So what we created was this box, and we put all the zines into each other. So we got a really big body of work, and you could open it and you could read it, like what Oliver said, you could read it chronologically, but you could also take out each chapter and read it individually. So for example, this is Sleeper in a Metropolis. That's a little story about these graffiti we saw in Sarajevo, and then we accidentally passed Metropolis, which is the home of Superman, and then we had this connection between Sarajevo and Metropolis. And then we had this one.
And Sleeper in Metropolis is the one really good piece of music by Anne Clark in the 80s. So,
and then, for example, there is this chapter about Imagine There's No Countries, which is a song by Bruce Springsteen. I think he made a cover version. And because while we were in Sarajevo, there were some protests at that time against corruption, and they were asking the European Union to support the process of what was going on. And then in this chapter, we also showed images from other portraits, from other protests which happened at the same time in the same year all over the world. And then, for example, War, What Is It Good For? Another song, and this is something we bought in Sarajevo. It's a kid's toy, and it's a kind of weird thing to find. And this woman, for example, is in Memphis, and she's protesting and she had a like very long history in Memphis with Martin Luther King and the motel where Martin Luther King was assassinated. So that was all points or places we went to and we put into context with each other, because that's something like also like the cartographie dynamique. We think that everything is in context and in contact with each other, so it doesn't exist individually or independently. And if you talk about a war in Europe in the 1990s, you maybe also can talk about the civil rights movement in America in the 60s. So there's always connections. And yeah.
I'll try to translate. Alla fine di tutto questo lavoro loro hanno realizzato, visto che il lavoro era anche molto, come dire, disorganico, se non era un lavoro unico, ma c'erano tanti capitoli, hanno realizzato 22 zin, che diciamo loro realizzano moltissime zin, hanno cominciato realizzando zin e ancora producono zin, oltre a libri. Fondamentalmente si sono suddivisi il lavoro in maniera tale che Katja si occupasse un po' di più della parte libro e invece Oliver della parte fotografica. E ovviamente c'è una grossa differenza tra quello che è la lettura delle immagini sul muro, dove ovviamente Oliver ha cercato di creare delle sequenze che lavorassero non solo in forma lineare, ma anche attraverso altre linee di lettura. Ovviamente il pubblico poi era libero di leggere quello che voleva. Affiancato a questa, diciamo, mostra, sviluppo delle immagini sul muro, c'era una serie di video. Per esempio nella mostra che hanno fatto, la fotografia della mostra che hanno fatto vedere a Reggio Emilia, al centro c'era questa bacheca con il libro e al fondo c'era lo schermo su cui scorrevano i video, sulla sinistra c'erano le immagini curate da Oliver e sulla destra c'erano le zin. All'interno delle zin loro fondamentalmente hanno sviluppato una chiave di lettura che poi è alla base anche del progetto di cartografia dinamica, ossia loro vedono e leggono delle relazioni, loro insomma diciamo lo facciamo un po' tutti, ma loro ci credono fermamente, sul fatto che ci sono delle relazioni tra tutto quello che ci succede tra varie parti del mondo. Quindi per esempio aveva fatto vedere una fotografia di questa strana confezione che conteneva delle, credo, caramelle o comunque dei chewing gum, però era a forma di bomba a mano, e hanno messo in relazione questa immagine con una donna afroamericana che in qualche modo ricordava come dire, la lotta per la segregazione razziale, il fatto che Martin Luther King era stato ucciso, così come altre relazioni. Fondamentalmente, come dire, realizzano immagini in posti diversi, ma attraverso dei testi e delle relazioni. Ma sto parlando. Sì. Sorry. Creano delle relazioni con storie molto diverse tra di loro all'interno di queste zine. Salute.
Maybe what we see here, this research number 1, that's something, because you and me is quite important, because I think different strategies we now still use is something we did there for the first time. And for example, this using the research or making the research also part of the project is something we also did in different chapters, some historic background, some like geographical background, but also some background, for example, about books and music and films and stuff we saw. And we also got, we met a Bosnian writer who now lives in Chicago since the 90s, Alexander Hemon, and he wrote a text about the book. So that's another part which became important for the book, and which we, like what you see here, we then also make part of the exhibition. So the people, we offer the people some information, or they can put it all together, or maybe they can connect it with stuff they read or they already know, and then put it in context with what we also offer And at the beginning we did it in English, but only in English, but as like what you said before, we won this award in ARL. So the French wanted to have the also a French text, and then we said, okay, then we also want to have a German and Bosnian text, because then that would be just nice thing to do, to write it in all the different languages. So we have different audiences who have a different perspective on this, and to explain maybe or make clear what we had in mind while we were working on the project.
There was one nice day when we discovered the Susan Sontag place in Sarajevo, because it was kind of familiar, or a good feeling that somehow in Sarajevo you are standing on a square, which was dedicated to Susan Sontag, because during the war Susan Sontag was doing a play, Waiting for Godot, in Sarajevo, and she was running from one famous hotel every day, I think, passing the Sniper's Alley, so to the theater to work on culture in the war, and so giving this kind of insights or kind of facts somehow is nice to read in context to the images I think we did. And
Hello.
Yes, sorry, I took away the microphone because of my daughter. How long did you work on the texts research?
It was like at the same time as we took the photographs. It was a like very fast decision. I think we decided, or we wrote a concept in October, November of 1 year, 2003 maybe, no, 13. And then the Goethe Institute already managed that we get some support in Sarajevo. That was even before we knew that Indira was Bosnian. That could have been different. And while we were there, we got some information. We are always kind of lucky that we meet like very nice people who share their information and share their knowledge and thoughts with us. And so that happened at the same time. And for the whole project, I think it took a year to photograph and to structure and to edit the whole images, and then some weeks to make the book and to produce the exhibition. But that was in total maybe 1.5 years for everything. And we see, like, because at the beginning, the first way we showed it was what we showed before, like in the Fotografia Europea. And this, for example, was a form to present it at the Krakow Festival as this 2-channel video work with some other video works and this historic material. And also there was a table. There was a table where you could again read all the chapters and all the scenes. And maybe it's interesting to explain that we had, for the first exhibition, we made this the book as an artist book in an edition of 10 copies. We sold some of them for collectors, for like a collector's prize. And so we could raise some money to finance all the prints and everything else we needed. And so we were lucky to have some extra copies we could send to the Dummy Award at the Rencontre Luma Award. And this is how it ended. We met Spector Books because we won this award and won the money, so we could publish it in a bigger edition, in a bigger run. And it looks a little different, but not very much.
Okay. Hanno detto molte cose, cerco di sintetizzare. È un libro, diciamo, in realtà ci hanno messo anche poco, perché più o meno 1 anno e mezzo per realizzarlo, ma c'è tantissimo testo che veniva raccolto durante gli scatti, man mano che andavano avanti, ma anche successivamente, facendo ricorso anche a scrittori. C'è uno scrittore bosniaco che vive in America che ha scritto e quant'altro. La cosa interessante, l'hanno detto verso la fine, è che fa un po' parte anche del loro essere editori indipendenti, perché fondamentalmente loro hanno realizzato 10 libri d'autore, quindi per collezionisti, cioè libri che hanno anche un prezzo piuttosto elevato. Ovviamente solitamente queste copie a serie limitata per collezionisti contemplano non solo la realizzazione del libro, ma anche delle stampe all'interno. Con i soldi che sono riusciti a realizzare, a guadagnare da questi libri d'autore, sono riusciti a diciamo, stampare altre copie e anche a realizzare altre cose, e sono riusciti a mandare il dummy definitivo ad Arla per il premio sui dummy che hanno vinto. È un premio che mi pare contempla circa 25.000 euro e che ti dà la possibilità di stampare con un editore, ovviamente. E lì sono entrati in contatto con Phocus, che è un'ottima casa editrice, e il risultato finale è questo, di cui sono parzialmente soddisfatti, nel senso probabilmente loro sono più una dimensione da zine o comunque da libro d'autore che non libro a grande tiratura, però fondamentalmente questo libro ha avuto un ottimo riscontro e insomma alla fine è un gran bel libro. Ok, I will put you another question. I mean, I have many, but I will try to select. Voi lavorate dal 2005 a progetti in Giappone. Cosa vi attrae di questo paese? Raccontate un po' come si articola il progetto Japan's Lesson, che sembra essere molto partecipativo. We have a lot of interest in common. So I'm also in love with Japan, and I would like to know why you have been working in Japan since 2005, I think. What attracts you about this country? And if you can say something more about the Japanese Lesson project, which seems to be involving a lot of artists, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think the reason why we work in Japan a lot is that we had a grant for 3 months. It was an exchange program between Düsseldorf and Osaka. And we had like different interests, which we were working on from the beginning. Like Oliver was like interested in subculture or counterculture, music culture. And I was interested in this like public life. And so we worked there and we immediately met like super nice people, which made us just come back. And I think every time you learn a little bit and then you learn a little more and then you find another place and then you find different people, and you always, every time you come back, you find a new topic. And this, for example, what you see here is a work we did. We exhibited the first time, I think in 2010 or 9 maybe. And it's a collection, a mashup of different kind of images we took, but ourselves, but also historic images from mangas and animes, from other artists, from the news, from historical archives. And in a way, it shows like very well how our interest and our research and our knowledge evolved a little bit, because after 2011, after the Tohoku earthquake, tsunami, nuclear catastrophe, we met a lot of artists and activists who could introduce us to groups of people who were activists, who protest, who showed us some like shops and meeting places. So that was kind of interesting and exciting is a weird word, but maybe exciting to learn more about this deep Japan, or closer Japanese groups and societies and understand more and more about what was going on and finding all this like different connections and new topics, new places. And yeah.
Hai Massimo?
Scusatemi.
No.
Sì, ci sono, scusatemi. Dicevo, l'interesse per il Giappone nasce in maniera casuale, nel senso che loro vincono una residency di 3 mesi, nella quale sviluppano il loro linguaggio in maniera differente. Oliver era molto interessato alla cultura underground, alla musica, diciamo una serie di altri argomenti, mentre per esempio Katja era molto più interessata alla vita di tutti i giorni, a daily life, attraverso la strada, in altre situazioni. Man mano che andavano avanti erano entrati in contatto sono entrati sempre di più in contatto con diverse realtà, con persone interessanti, hanno imparato sempre di più, e questo li ha spinti a tornare per imparare sempre di più, una società che in qualche modo trovano molto stimolante. E per esempio nel 2011, in seguito diciamo, allo tsunami e alle conseguenze dello tsunami, loro sono entrati in contatto con moltissimi artisti che in qualche modo esprimevano il loro disappunto rispetto anche a quello che era successo, e l'energia nucleare e tutto quanto insomma era collegato in qualche modo a questo disastro. E quindi questo ha dato loro l'opportunità di condividere con diversi autori il loro interesse, le loro storie, il loro materiale, e da questo è nato il progetto Japanese Lesson. Is this the book?
Yeah, that's the book.
Ok, questo è il libro che nasce, diciamo, che ha a che fare con Japanese Lesson.
No, actually, maybe it's the first book we did, and we again only did it in an edition of 10 copies. That's again, I think 13 chapters this time. And here, for example, we see images we took on the border or on the edges of Sanya in Tokyo, which is a neighborhood or district which suffer from stigmatization and discrimination. It's a lot of homeless people and day laborers working there, and has a historic reason. But still, these kind of stigmatizations still happen in Japan. So it can happen to you, like if you live in a wrong district, you maybe don't get a job in a prestigious, huge company, or you can't marry a person from a traditionally conservative family. And that was interesting for us to see, because in a way, it doesn't seem to look so different from the district which is next to it. It has the same kind of buildings, the same houses, and we were discussing this topic of in and out while walking. So this aspect of walking is very important for us. Just starting in here, for example, I think we started around 3 o'clock and then walked until we came back to the starting point, not being afraid of like the lights going away, it's getting dark. Sometimes it started raining. So we wanted to do it like during one walk, taking images maybe every 100 meters in the direction of the street we were walking. You still have to turn on your...
Okay, sorry. Did you walk for an entire day in a small area from?
Yeah, this is like a smaller area. I think this was 3.5 hours, but there are longer walks, like in Osaka, Nishinari, for example, or Ikuno, which took us 8 or 9 hours.
But it's always around the outside of the shape of the area. So the edges or the borders.
You are using the same, let's say, strategy also in other works. I think also in cartography dynamique, there is a lot of works having to do with walking, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That this is like also the Japanese lesson for us. It's a part of the cartography dynamique. And for example, there are like different chapters. For example, let's see. Here, where we walked around the construction site of the Olympic Stadium. And that's something, for example, we did in Paris, because for us, that's a clear connection that Tokyo 2020 was the last Olympic Games, and in Paris 2025 will be the next Olympic Games. So that's a connection through the topic, but also like our way of doing it and observing it and discussing like how, for example, this Olympic Games, but it could also be Expo, for example, has an influence on the city or changes the shape of the city or changes how people living in the cities change their lives, for example.
Ok, è molto interessante quest'ultimo aspetto, cioè che loro ovviamente nelle aree, diciamo, di Tokyo, ma poi anche dopo nel progetto Cartografie Dynamique, fondamentalmente camminano per ore nello stesso distretto dalla mattina fino alla sera, o comunque diciamo dalla luce al buio, per, come dire, in qualche modo raccontare le loro sensazioni riguardo ai luoghi che vivono e creare anche delle relazioni tra le diverse città. Per esempio, nello specifico qua loro stanno camminando nelle aree di costruzione del villaggio olimpico di Tokyo e poi hanno creato delle relazioni con immagini in situazioni simili nel villaggio olimpico che hanno costruito a Parigi o che stanno costruendo a Parigi, per vedere che tipo di influenze può per esempio creare un fenomeno, un evento come i Giochi Olimpici, cioè che tipo di impronta lascia in una città. Se guardiamo nella storia ci sono stati dei Giochi Olimpici che hanno completamente cambiato il volto delle città in positivo, e ci sono stati dei Giochi Olimpici invece che sono stati dei clamorosi flop, sia dal punto di vista della urbanistica, socialità e quant'altro, ma anche in termini economici. Ok? So I want to put you on. Oh, sorry.
I was just trying to explain, because it could be like a whole district of a city, but it could also be like here just one building, which, for example, this is like super interesting, the Imperial Hotel, which hosted the International Olympic Committee and offices in there, and it's also has a very interesting architecture history. So we just walked around there, and as you can imagine, like just walking around a building is different. You have a different perspective than walking for hours in a like more rural or peripheral neighborhood.
Ok, non necessariamente deve essere un quartiere, a volte può essere anche solo un palazzo. Per esempio, nello specifico, un palazzo che ha, diciamo, dove hanno pernottato gli atleti, che era un palazzo che, diciamo, chiaramente ha avuto un ruolo importante durante i giochi, ma al tempo stesso era un palazzo che aveva anche una storia dal punto di vista architettonico piuttosto importante. Quindi, diciamo, in qualche modo l'analisi a volte non è legata specificatamente a delle aree, ma anche a un luogo molto specifico e molto ristretto. Okay, let's talk about ant photo. With this, for this magazine project, you have developed also a manifesto that I will try to read a little bit. I will translate in Italian. I don't need to read in English because you know the manifesto. You made it. Okay. Parlatemi di Ant Photo. Ant Photo è un magazine, ma è anche un progetto per il quale hanno anche elaborato un vero e proprio manifesto. Provo a tradurvi un attimo questo manifesto. We Love Photography. Noi amiamo la fotografia in tutte le sue forme. Una foto è digitale, analogica, a colori, in bianco e nero, è un oggetto, è un libro, è un blog, è un newspaper, quindi un quotidiano, è un magazine, è un film, è una storia, è uno statement, è un'installazione, è una scultura, è la verità sempre di qualcheduno. Ci fa perdere, ci fa ritrovare, è tecnologia, è originale, è una copia, è una riproduzione, è infinita. La fotografia è il futuro, è il passato, la fotografia è un medium, è in transizione. Una singola immagine è solo la punta di un iceberg. Usate la fotografia come un linguaggio internazionale, non in qualche modo dimenticatevi mai di progredire. Vogliamo vedere le immagini che ci mancano. La fotografia è troppo buona, troppo bella per essere considerata solo un'arte e così via. Ok, I translate a little bit the manifesto.
So that's a question? No.
I mean, the question is, talk about Ant Photo. What's the meaning of the project? What do you want to do with this and with the magazine?
Yeah, Anti-Photo at the beginning was an exhibition project. We got a space from the city, which you see here, which is a huge space and has like mobile, like variable walls. And we were like very interested in inviting international artists who show like in this understanding of photography, what you just read, like different kinds of photography. As we are like here in Düsseldorf, in a like there's this like very clear idea of like how photography art is, but for us that wasn't never enough, and we were always looking for people who are working differently with photography. And we were very lucky to get this space. And I think the exhibitions always were for 2 months. And we also had a little budget to always make a magazine, which at the beginning was more like a catalog for the exhibition. So we always used the cover and the last page to show some of our works and to show the focus of each exhibition. And then there were interviews with the artist we were exhibiting, and we had like some different questions about their photography. And we could do this for 3 years. And after 3 years, I think someone asked, like, what is it, Anti-Photo? Do you have a manifesto? So in a way, we were again kind of pushed to write it down, to try to find words for what we did before. And since then, we had like different places to exhibit. Like, for example, this is like an old building, an artist society, which we could also use to show every year during a festival, different exhibitions. And we were also, but maybe that's a little different topic, invited to curate the main exhibition of the festival in Cologne. But for us, it was always important to show the different forms, like what Oliver said before, like the different forms, how photography can appear, like in a book, in a presentation, framed on the wall, unframed on the wall, and so on. And this is how it all started at the beginning. And for some time now, we have a little space where we can, once a month, that was before Corona, we had a little bar space, or a space we used as a bar where we showed 10 or 15 books from our library, from other artists, to a certain topic. So that was for us an important social kind of event, to invite people to discuss photography and to discuss the books and have a nice evening while Oliver was preparing Japanese drinks. And for some time now, we have this this mobile anti-photo bar because the space is still too small to open it because of Corona. So we developed this idea of a mobile bar we can bring in a car to like bigger spaces, bring books, bring drinks, and have a like 4-hour event discussing books and dealing with books.
It's really interesting. I'll try to translate. Loro ottengono uno spazio a Düsseldorf dove fondamentalmente mostrano i loro lavori, ma lavori di diversi artisti, pur avendo un'idea molto chiara di quello che è il linguaggio, insomma, quello che a loro interessa nella fotografia, confrontarsi con tutti questi autori e chiamare degli autori più o meno conosciuti a esporre su temi che hanno a che fare con la fotografia, li ha portati ad approfondire diverse tematiche e anche diciamo, a molte conoscenze. Questo progetto è continuato per, se sono riuscito a capire bene, circa 3 anni, dopodiché sono stati invitati in diverse situazioni, perché vedete dal 2013 al 2017 sono stati invitati a ripetere lo stesso esperimento in diversi altri luoghi, quindi non nello spazio specifico ma in luoghi diversi, invitando sempre tantissimi autori di alto livello, ma anche autori per quanto di alto livello magari meno conosciuti. E negli ultimi tempi hanno sviluppato anche questa specie di mini bar dove la gente aveva a disposizione non solo la possibilità di bere dei drink preparati da Oliver, drink giapponesi, ma anche di vedere dei libri o che altro. E questa, diciamo, formula del mini bar è stata poi anche sviluppata ulteriormente durante il periodo del coronavirus, perché ovviamente non c'era la possibilità di realizzare delle mostre o che altro. Is still working the project? I mean, are you going to develop it more in other places or?
Yeah, we just decided to show it in May in Düsseldorf during the festival, and I think in June during another festival, but it really depends at the moment because we hope to get our little space back. Or for example, last year in Paris, we were invited by Emilie Loriola, who had this Sasori Books bar, and she made it like really perfectly created Japanese bar, and so we came there more like a pop-up bar. So it could be in any form. We also made virtual events on the Mozilla Hub, so people could meet virtually with some nice avatars in a virtual anti-photo bar.
Ok, probabilmente porteranno avanti ancora questo progetto o in alcuni spazi. A Parigi, per esempio, c'è questo bar giapponese perfettamente ricostruito dove già hanno esposto e che probabilmente diventerà di nuovo posto dove esporranno. Anche in Germania, durante 2 festival, hanno intenzione di esporre di nuovo. Last question: you live in Düsseldorf, and I mean, for instance, the first Oliver's portrait seems to be very influenced by some authors of the Düsseldorf school, but and finally, your work is really far from that kind of photography. My question is, how much have you been influenced by the Düsseldorf school generally? How important do you think was this school for photography and for your city? And in your opinion, why the authors of this school reach such high market quotation? Let me translate in Italian. I ritratti di Oliver, soprattutto diciamo, i primi lavori di Oliver, sembrano molto influenzati da alcuni autori della scuola di Düsseldorf. Loro sono di Düsseldorf. Però diciamo, è evidente che nel loro lavoro si sono abbastanza allontanati da quello stile. Ho chiesto quanto siete stati influenzati da questa scuola e quanto pensate che sia stata importante questa scuola per la fotografia in generale, ma anche per la vostra città, e perché secondo loro questi autori hanno raggiunto quotazioni di mercato così alte, perché sono gli unici autori in fotografia che hanno quotazioni pari a pittori anche di altre epoche con quotazioni veramente molto alte. Okay.
Yeah, I think you can't like deny that the Bechers and Augustana, which is who came from Cologne, they are like very important for the photography history. And I think the Becher school, I don't know, I have the feeling that they were just at the right time, at the right place.
Yeah.
But like some ideas, like maybe working in series or having like a very clear aesthetic understanding is something which is kind of interesting for us, but we also had this different influences, like for example from Japan, or like for example here you see Oliver Jacobs and how he made the book and how he used the paper and how he developed other concepts, like for example in Imaginary Club, which is, I can also show you somewhere, which was then a combination of portrait and a totally different kind of landscape photography. So I think you need to find like your own way in between different. I'm sorry. I can't talk and have the sound at the same time. So like you see here, like there's the portraits and the landscape photographs juxtaposed to each other, and it also found his first form in a book. So I think that's different influences which made it interesting for, like in this case, Oliver, but also for others, for both of us to work differently with photography.
I mean, maybe it's interesting to say that because we were more interested in magazines, like in music magazines, also in fashion magazines when we were studying, so that the influence of, for example, August Sander came through Richard Avedon, who, and maybe Yoji Yamamoto, who quoted like August Sander, the clothes he thought are really interesting for him to focus on for his cuts and for his fashion, and Avedon and Wim Wenders. So they are more explaining about August Sander than I ever thought at that time. So through these magazines, maybe the idea of this, how to deal with these people or how to photograph them, it was not really inspired directly by Becher or Sander or this, so it just came through other doors, the back door.
Ok, fondamentalmente diciamo sostengono di essere influenzati, ma non troppo. Se ci sono altri autori che hanno influenzato molto di più il loro lavoro, che non la scuola di Düsseldorf. Tra l'altro stanno facendo vedere Imaginary Club is the title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Che è anche il libro che ha vinto Paris Photo, e che è un bellissimo libro, tra l'altro introvabile adesso anche un valore molto alto, in cui in qualche modo loro associano ritratti, paesaggi, eccetera, e dove ci sono influenze forse più riferite a autori come August Sander o altri, che non specificamente alla scuola di Düsseldorf, dove dicono che probabilmente il successo che ha avuto, per quanto valida come scuola, cioè non la mettono in discussione, ma il successo è legato molto al fatto che, come succede spesso, sono capitati al momento giusto nel posto giusto, quindi in qualche modo hanno avuto un eco molto superiore a quello che poi effettivamente hanno creato. Ok, se non ci sono domande, visto l'ora e visto che mia figlia vuole andare a dormire, vorrei... He's really tired. So, io, come dire, vi saluterei e saluterei Katja e Oliver, che sono stati gentilissimi. Che dite?
E che saluto anch'io Katja e Oliver. E il loro percorso è stato entusiasmante, sono stati davvero illuminanti, è stato molto bello vedere il modo in come si sono relazionati sia tra di loro che con tutto ciò che hanno raccontato. È un modo particolare, molto originale. Non li conoscevo, quindi sono veramente mortificato per questo, approfondirò ancora di più e spero che lo facciano anche tutti coloro che hanno partecipato questa sera. Il video sarà visibile ancora, come sapete, sulle pagine di Focus Magazine. Io ho messo in chat, ancora una volta ripeto, l'invito per il 21, per il giorno 1, per il 1° marzo. Mi piacerebbe che ci foste tutti e grazie ancora per essere qui. Se non volete fare domande, Oreste, volevi domandare qualcosa? Enza, qualcosa? Arnaldo? Siete soddisfatti? La piccola Ludovica vuole andare a dormire, ma...
La piccola Ludovica chiede se è finito, quindi almeno per quanto
finito,
mi
Ludovica,
riguarda, io penso che saluterò.
Ok, grazie,
Okay.
grazie Katja.
Oliver,
Grazie a tutti.
Katja,
Grazie,
very
Franco.
much. See you soon in
Dankeschön,
Rome.
Oliver.
Yeah,
Grazie.
see you in Rome
Grazie
next
a tutti,
month.
grazie davvero.
Wiedersehen. Grazie.
Bye bye.
Ciao ciao.
Buonanotte a tutti. Buonanotte a tutti. Grazie.
Buonanotte, grazie.
Grazie Mimmo. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao Franco, buonanotte.